Ken Kraetzer for CBSI and CBSI Talking Business, our video podcast series. We talk to leaders in the field of digital marketing, banking, insurance, customer service, and business education, and all to highlight the great work of our team. We're based in Harrison, New York, and we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. We provide insurance-backed benefits to the credit card and payments industry. And today, really glad to have a chance to talk with a friend who's a fellow board member of the Direct Marketing Club of New York and is the executive vice president of Adstra, a major data management company, and that is Charlie Swift. Charlie, how are you today?
Good, Ken. How are you? I didn't know it was your 50th anniversary. Congratulations.
Yeah. From our founder, Bob Conti, started the company in 1972 to have an insurance business. He started working with banks and started to work with benefits on credit cards back in the late 80s. And that really has been a great opportunity for us to serve the banking industry for many years. So it's a great testimony to our founder, Bob Conti. Charlie, good to see you. I'm always amazed some of your talks. You know the data business inside and out. You've got a background in engineering and operations management, and worked at big places like American Express and Hearst Publication. Tell us a little bit about Adstra and some of the challenges that you're working on.
Sure, and thanks again for having me here today. It's just a pleasure to join you. Adstra actually is it's a company that used to be referred to as ALC. It was a long-time list brokerage company. About 3.5, 4 years ago, a group of folks that are very familiar with the data and identity space, having worked at companies like Axiom, Experian, LiveRamp, Neustar, the Trade Desk, all the ones that you're familiar with, sort of came together with the idea that there had to be a better answer to how data was managed and deployed and activated upon in the industry, and how identity was used to make that happen. And so we said, let's reimagine what the world could be like. And that was what Adstra was born out of, that reimagination of how do we reapproach the data and identity space in today's market.
Very good. Now, I wanted to give you a chance. You mentioned your company has some news coming out, and what's the announcement you have for us?
Sure, and thanks for giving me the opportunity. Yeah, so in that reimagination, if you will, that we just talked about in terms of how does identity work, we recognized that we wanted to give control back to brands and how they recognize and identify their customers. And to do that, they have to have a solution. And really what we're excited to announce is our solution to that problem, Conexa, which we see as the first enterprise identity platform. And what we mean by enterprise identity platform is it's a platform that actually is can be installed behind a brand's firewalls to enable all of the identity and resolution and identity management and customer journey management activities that a brand needs to do to be able to control their customer relationship. And Conexa is sort of a solution that allows them to do that without having to necessarily rely on all the multitude of technologies that are out there today. It can work within those multitude of technologies, but ultimately it's there to help sort of be what we might call a platform as a service that we install within a company's firewalls to let them take control of identity resolution and their customer relationship.
Well,
so
certainly
another product, and we're very excited about it.
Certainly a very important solution. Now, the identity management, identity resolution business has been growing. So many situations where businesses have to identify and match customers in databases and online advertising. What are some of the situations that you're helping your customers with identity resolution?
Sure, and I think the first thing we like to think about is, and our approach has always been people-based. So we start with a recognition that Ken is a person, and then build off of that in terms of identity resolution. And why is that important? It's important because the big problem was what we call the on and offline divide. That if you think about how brands execute their marketing program today, they have a digital representation of Ken and they have a physical representation of Ken. We suggest that shouldn't exist. There's just Ken. And so How do you solve that problem? Well, you have to have a solution that brings everything together, because once you start with the person and then you think about identity out of the person, as opposed to just starting with identifiers, an email hash, a mobile ID, etc., we start with the person and then attach those identifiers. What that lets you do is allows you to be consistent across all your media. And that's really what marketers want to be. They want to control a consistent message to their customers, regardless of the media or the way that they interact with that customer. And that's what we're trying to drive, and the solution we're trying to build for.
Very good. Well, it's certainly been a number of sessions at the Direct Marketing Club of New York in recent years on identity, and some of it has to do with tracking customers and doing promotions, identifying where a customer came from, and then what is the action that they ended up taking. Did they buy? Did they not buy? Did they click? Any of the different actions they may take, and tracking it back to the source of where that customer prospect may have come from. How do you help marketers with situations like that?
Sure. Well, the challenge in any sort of attribution equation, again, it goes back to that media question. You know, you may see an ad on a digital promotion, but you buy in store in a physical way. You may get an email that you then respond to, but then you actually pass the email on to someone in your household. Maybe it's a different household. So it's the problem is stitching the journey of information together. So in attribution, I touched you in one point, you respond in another point. If you think about old why direct mail was so easy, was that I sent you a piece of direct mail and you responded to that direct mail. You, the customer, made that connection of message to response. What we're trying to do is now saying message to response aren't that connected, and how can we stitch all those pieces together? So we're trying to help people. So if you're putting an ad up on YouTube TV, right, there's an IP address there, and we can connect that IP address to the household. And then when you buy in store, we can then say, well, the credit card that you used was associated with this address. So credit card to address, or maybe it's some other form of loyalty number that you have to address to IP address. Now you've got the journey of identity connection that then you can do the attribution of, well, this person saw this ad and they made this purchase, or this household saw this ad, this household made this purchase. It's important to recognize that identity is actually not a deterministic thing. It's all probabilistic. It's all about what's the likelihood of the person connecting at each of the points. And that's what we're trying to stitch that together with the highest degree of probability that it is you through the whole chain.
Yeah, you describe on your website the platform that your company uses for doing different types of modeling. You talk about deterministic, and which is using basic customer information, and then probabilistic. I hope I'm saying that right. That is based on what you likely expect a customer to do or a prospect. Tell us a little bit about how your platform can support marketing and identifying customers.
Sure. So again, what we're talking about is a platform that we want to work behind your firewall. So you start with, let's just say someone visiting your website, there's an identity tag that you're firing off, and that tag then we know is connected to a mobile ID. Mobile ID is connected to you, the person, always going back to the person. So what we're helping them do, if it's behind the firewall, is connecting to information that customer or that brand already has about that customer. So they recognize you as already having been a customer, bought these items, etc. As soon as they can resolve who you are, recognize you, they then can activate a decision. And that's really what we're trying to do, help them speed up the ability to recognize you and then apply information. So bring all the silos of information together. So there's a 360 profile, if you will. And typically people talk about 360, but it's really a 360 digital and a 360 terrestrial. So we're talking about a full 360 bit of information here that allows you then to make that decision and present back to the customer the offer or the recommendation or whatever it is that you're trying to do as a marketer. So what we're really trying to do is speed up that ability to execute that decision that you as a marketer want to make every time you talk to a customer. How do you know as much as you can about them and make the most relevant offer back to them?
Very good. And I got to ask you about third-party cookies. It's been a topic that has been changing as companies and industry has tried to move away from using cookies, but now every time you go to a website, the brand asks you, are you okay if we apply third-party cookies so we can track and provide better service? Where is that going? Is it just permission-based cookies the way that is going to go forward?
Well, I think no one has an exact answer to that question. I think that's why it's been bouncing around. Through our Chief Privacy Officer, Jason Beer, we are very active in understanding what's going on, and we actually have had a position for quite a while now, I'd say more than a year now, that while third parties cookies may change, and what you just described in that permission-based is a change, we actually don't think that they're likely to go away completely. And part of that belief, and by the way, it still may go away. We're not going to bet either way. We want to have a solution that exists for marketers regardless of a third-party cookie, and we do think our solution is independent of cookies. But if you think about what is the purpose of a third-party cookie, it's to allow an efficient way for advertisers to deliver and execute their advertising. I want to target this group of people and fire up those ads. The people who control, the big tech that controls the execution of the advertising, they don't want third-party cookies. Google wants you to have to go through their system. Apple wants you to go through their system, etc. Third party is actually a way to work advertising around their ecosystem. And so as you're seeing more and more of these antitrust lawsuits picking up from the government against the Googles of the world, that's putting pressure on them to keep the cookies out there, because it's hard for them to say we don't have a monopoly when we're eliminating the mechanism by which the other people can play. And so that's why you're seeing some of the Google retract, saying we're going to delay getting rid of third-party cookies immediately, because they have this sort of counter force that's working against them. I mean, it's in their interest to get rid of third-party cookies in a way. From their business perspective, it's really less about a consumer privacy. There is a consumer privacy piece that we obviously have to understand and recognize, and that's the important part. When we think about how do you manage all of this, it's not about the cookie, it's about managing the privacy rights of the individual and being transparent, hence the asking for permission that you talked about, hence for being a people-based solution so that you can connect the person's choice to all the points of activation.
Absolutely. Are there best practices that you see as really the way to go in data management you recommend to your clients? Certainly trying to avoid further regulation of the industry. Or what are some of the best practices that you see are really paramount for data managers to utilize?
Sure, and so use the word avoid. I don't think we can avoid anything. We have to work in the ecosystem that's presented to us. So the best practices really start with being prepared to work in any ecosystem, being flexible, not betting the farm on any one answer. I just talked about third-party cookies. They may or may not go away. We think it'll be slower, but we could be wrong. We're not betting our ecosystem on any one answer. So first best practice is to have a solution that is highly flexible to whatever might come. Jeff Bezos at Amazon once talked about bet on the things that don't change, not the things that change. And so the thing that we know that doesn't change goes back to you, the person. So a people-based approach to identity and data is really paramount, and that means not relying on an email hash, but again, relying on recognizing, resolving back to the person. And so having a solution that does that is key. Having the flexibility to respond to it is key. Being in control of the customer relationship. So as a brand, don't let people get in between you and your customer. Think about all the technology that you have that executes. Don't relinquish control to the other technology, because not only are they going to want to have control, but ultimately, once they have control, they put a financial tax on that discussion. So if you think about the big tech and they're charging you every time you want to talk to your customer in a conversation, they maybe have come to you directly, but the tech is still putting that tax. So the economics suggest don't put taxes on your discussion with your customer. So that's another big piece. And the last piece is transparency. I think really having a view of exactly what's happening. Black box solutions are not the answer. They may be the easy answer, but they're not the right answer. Too often technology just says, give me your problem and I'll resolve it and I'll give you an answer and you just go on your merry way. But you don't know what happened. Was the identity that they resolved to correct? Did they meet the privacy expectations that the customer has? Because the customer has a relationship with you. The fact that some technology did something that they weren't allowed to do, they're going to still hold it accountable to the brand they're talking to. So transparency in everything that you do is critical in terms of, and that'll also afford you long-term the ability to continue to evolve and change, answering back to that flexibility piece that we talked about.
Very good. Maybe is there another case study you'd like to mention, or a type of, or some of the industries and brand types that you're able to provide solutions to?
Sure. Well, I think that, for us, and we've got a great partner that we've done a lot of work with in Cox Automotive, and I can talk about them certainly publicly. Several of the customers we don't, but they were kind enough to help support us in some of our recent announcement of Conexa. And they do a great job of thinking about the use cases sort of in three parts. One, which is data unification. How do I bring all my data together? And so often we're finding customers that are saying, I just need identity to simply help me bring the silos of information together. CDPs, for example, they are great at organizing data and facilitating the bringing of it together. But if you don't have an effective and accurate identity solution, again, how do you bridge that digital and terrestrial divide, the on and offline world, and bring them together? So you still need identity to make that happen. So the data unification is sort of the biggest use case that we see. The second use case is the one that we talked more commonly about, which is identity resolution. How do I recognize my customer the moment I can, or as soon as I can, so I can honor them the way I want to honor them and the way the relationship warrants. And then the third use case is the one that I think a lot of marketers are struggling with right now because it's hard, and that's really the journey management question. The use case of how do I treat the customer or move the customer through my journey? Again, it used to be very simple. I sent you a direct mail piece maybe, and then there was a second direct mail piece or phone call. It was a very simple linear process of how I brought a customer in through the funnel. Maybe you started with some brand advertising at the beginning. Now that sort of customer funnel is this complete mess. And so managing the customer journey and saying, how do I know, how many times have I talked to you? What messages have you seen? What messages have you responded to? And how do I continue to refine it down to the moment of purchase? Especially as we're seeing, what COVID has really done is accelerated the direct to consumer method of purchase. You're not wandering retail shops as much anymore. You're going online and just saying, just deliver to my house. So that funnel of managing the journey management becomes even more and more important because you don't have moments of intersection the way you used to have before. So now it's how do we help people with that journey and set the cadence of the whole conversation over 4 weeks, let's just say, with a dialogue with a customer. So those are the three big use cases that we talk about: the journey management, the resolution, and the data unification.
Of course, our company works with banks around the country, and customer identification has been a big topic, certainly through the years in credit scoring and identifying information that you can add to customer prospecting, and then also just in recognizing customers when they come to a bank's website or wanting to go to mobile banking. And certainly we see a lot of activity there in trying to work with credit scoring, and then also identifying customers when they electronically come up to the bank.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's important there to pause and say, so when we talk about identity resolution, there are scales or degrees of confidence that you have to work in, and there's a cost to that confidence, if you will. And so from a marketing perspective, right, you have a level of confidence that you're willing to live with. If I'm wrong, what happens? Okay, you saw the wrong ad. Cost is fairly low. On the credit card side, if I'm wrong, what happens? Well, you go get a credit card and you start spending money, then you don't pay it back and things like that. There's a higher, so that the traditional fraud issue of identity resolution is a much higher degree of confidence that you have to have, and that requires a lot more authentication, right? So that's where you talk about multiple points of authentication, interaction with the customer. That's not what our platform or what we're talking about. We're talking about more the light touch marketing resolution versus the credit card high touch fraud resolution kind of level. So you always have to think about what's the level of confidence that you have to have, and that really starts with asking the question, what happens if I'm wrong?
Absolutely, very important. Leads to, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your career. You've been at some interesting places, American Express, Hearst Publications. Yeah, as I mentioned, a background in engineering and operations management from business school. Tell us a little bit about your career path.
Sure. Well, I sort of struggled with, the mathematic mind and the creative mind. And so as you talked about, I started off in college as an architectural engineer. The idea of how can I apply, mathematics and the beauty of mathematics to engineering and architecture. And I had a wonderful professor by the name of David Billington, and he talked about the beauty of the Brooklyn Bridge and the beauty of the Eiffel Tower, two phenomenally historic engineering accomplishments, and yet they live in time because of their beauty. So that was sort of a core to who I was, and that's what's evolved through my whole career, which is this connection of creativity and mathematics. And so if you went down the creative path being the architect, well, you didn't, that was one path. I could be the engineer, and that was the mathematic path. But where was the point of intersection? And I found that actually in marketing. I started off in a consulting space, and then eventually I went to American Express, which was a great marketing company, but used mathematics because of the financial part in a very big way of how they brought them together. So if you think about the great data-driven marketers of the early days, American Express was clearly one of them. And I just learned so much and enjoyed so much of what I did there. I had the opportunity to actually build the first prospect database at American Express. I did so actually with Axiom back in the late 90s. It was, sort of Citibank, Amex, and Walmart were the three big prospect database engines that were out there doing the analytics. And I ran all the analytics for the consumer card side of the world, as opposed to the small business and the corporate side. But I had the consumer card, and it was a lot of fun working to figure out how do we evolve that understanding of the consumer. As I left American Express, interestingly enough, is I went to another historic direct marketing company, Columbia House. And I talk about that difference of making a mistake. If I was wrong in who I was talking to in American Express, I could lose $1,000 for every one person I was wrong with. If I was wrong at Columbia House, I basically lost nothing. As long as I was right more than half the time, I was good to go. So it taught me quickly that scale of identity resolution. But again, it was all about using marketing and math to how do we create the right message for customers. And I love that puzzle. When Hearst was looking to sort of say, moving out of that space of being just a big engine of advertisers, put big ads in our magazines, and when the advertisers started asking the publishers, we want to know a little bit more about these people that we're marketing to in the ads in your magazine. So I went over to Hearst to actually bring that expertise of, wait a second, we know who the magazine is getting delivered to. Can we use that information to target ads? And as technology and printing allowed the ads to be changed, all of a sudden Hearst wanted to be able to have the flexibility to offer that to their advertisers. And so again, I built another big data marketing base that we used at Hearst to facilitate all of that sort of targeting ads in the print magazine. Essentially what we wanted to do was make the print magazine, while the response time was a little slower, just like a digital ad. That was sort of the goal of what we wanted to build. And then what was great was once digital became something bigger, we had a digital and a print. It just was a timing speed question, but the engine behind all of that ad determination was the same thing. And I love that problem of building that mathematics solution to solve that creativity of marketing. So it was fun. And then, why I left all of that was having been on the buy side of all that for all the times. I loved coming to Adstra because now it was not just solving for one company, but it was actually starting to solve the problem for an industry. And the great thing is, having the discussion with so many people who are trying to solve these problems and helping more people solve the problems and make data more efficient in its use in the marketplace.
Very good. Well, you've been at some interesting companies. I worked at American Express early in my career. Great learning opportunity about how a big company marketed to a big national customer base, and Columbia House and Hearst, major names in the publishing industry. And Charlie Swift, Executive Vice President of Adstra. And your website is adstradata.com, and also a fellow board member of the Direct Marketing Club of New York. Perhaps a final thought for us today?
No, my final thought I always sort of say was, data is a wonderful tool in terms of what it can do to help you drive your success, but you have to still remember that creativity, and this is the balance, creativity is equally important, right? Data just makes resolves the decisions and says quickly, I made a good decision or a bad decision. It allows me to repeat stuff that's good more effectively. But marketing still does start with creative. Content still is king, no matter what we say. And so a good message will outdo a good model every day. A good model delivers a good message more effectively. So I just sort of always remind everybody, don't over rely on either one side. It's a balance of how you think about to be an effective marketer. And remember, creativity and analytics together is what success is all about. So just keep that balance in mind.
Yeah, just talked to a professor at an area business school about that point, and he said no matter what all the tools are that we use in marketing, it's still about the fundamentals of attracting customers and creating demand. Charlie Swift, Executive Vice President of Adstra, and and also a board member of the Direct Marketing Club of New York. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope we can do this again soon.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And this is Ken Kraetzer for CBSI and CBSI Talking Business, and we're representing our team. We're based in Harrison, New York. We provide insurance-based benefits to the credit card and payments industry, and we are celebrating as a company our 50th anniversary year. So look forward to seeing you again, and thanks for watching.